What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. This is Best Served Podcast 169. We're talking estate-grown Colorado wines with Laura Black of Mesa Park Vineyards. Thank you for being on the show, Laura.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited, too, because right when you sat down, I said, you have people that are in the winery tasting wines. That made me very excited because I am super jealous. I would like to be tasting Colorado wine right now. So for everybody, this is our channel of Best Served Chilled, where we really focus on beverage producers and professionals. Clearly, Laura checks both of those boxes. And we're going to focus on Colorado wine today, a region that I'm excited about. So Laura, tell us, Mesa Park Vineyards out in Palisade, what can people expect from you out there?
So we are an estate winery, which means we grow our own fruit. And we've got about 8 acres of grapes. We've got a winery on our property where we produce everything from crushing the grapes all the way to bottling and labeling. And then we have a tasting room with a pretty large patio and some really nice views, which is where those people you were referring to are sitting right now, tasting wine.
Yes.
So, we tend to produce wines on the drier side. We're open 7 days a week, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we're up on East Orchard Mesa and Palisade, so about 15 minutes outside of town.
Yeah, beautiful spot. It's a little bit off the path, which I like. I think it was very cool. I've been there a couple times. Great wines. Just you mentioned the patio, the outdoor space. Beautiful. This time of year, Palisade, if you don't know, you need to pay attention. If you're coming from any of the Four Corner states, if you're coming from Denver, Colorado Springs, get out there. Trust me on that for sure. So take us back a little bit. I want to know you personally, what gets you into winemaking? Give us a little bit of the background.
So Brandon, my husband, and I have a kind of a fun story. We are both wine lovers, and we were actually in Palisade, oh gosh, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, just over from Denver on a wine tasting trip. And my background is in real estate and his is in construction. And so we were always both being entrepreneurs looking for the next opportunity. And so we thought, I wonder what it would be like to buy a vacation home in Palisade and Airbnb it and, have a place to stay while we're over here. So we started looking at what was for sale, and Mesa Park was listed for sale. And that's how we found it.
I love this. So real estate, construction, classic, obvious segue into winemaking makes sense. But you're actually looking through the market and you just happen to notice that there's a listing for winery. So instead of the Airbnb vacation home, you just go ahead and buy a winery.
Well, yeah. I mean, it didn't happen that quickly, but it was
yeah.
Let's go be looky-loos and check this place out.
Yeah.
And so we came up and met the prior owners. They were working the tasting room that day and had a 3-hour meeting with them. We had no idea what. It was in October. It was during harvest, and Chuck, the winemaker and farmer, was like, "Yeah, I just picked these grapes. The pH was this, this was this," and it's like,
yep,
cool, So we left Palisade that day, and spent the 4 hours on the way back to Denver, sort of doing the could we, should we, are we crazy? And one thing led to another and to another, and it just it fell together for us. So we went for it.
From the day you saw the listing to when you closed on the vineyard, how long was that process?
Oh, probably about 1.5 years.
Okay.
So it took a little while because we had no intention of buying a winery and moving our entire life to Palisade. We were under construction on a house in Denver that wasn't finished yet. So we had to finish that, take care of that. We were engaged but not married. So we had to get married. We had all these things. And so
you had to be practical before you kind of went with the dream excursion out to become winemakers. All right. So this is interesting, right? Because there's 2 potential scenarios that I see play out in this in restaurants, breweries, wineries, distilleries, all of that. Fresh eyes, and you have a very unique perspective, so you don't have the institutional biases that sometimes people who are in it. And then on the other side, you don't have the institutional knowledge. You don't have the history and the experience and kind of understand that, again, as you said, over your head. So, it can go a couple different ways. when you're thinking about that, what is it for you? You mentioned Chuck. Is he still the winemaker?
So he's not any longer. Part of our contract with them was that Chuck would stick around for the first year.
Gotcha.
And he was here more than full time. And, a lot of days it was like, he kind of like turned us this way and was like, walk that way today, Yeah. And then there were other days where we had pieces of equipment in the back of the winery that I didn't even know what they did until we got to harvest. We were so green. Brandon, my husband, is from Montana, and his family had a farm growing up. And so he had been in agriculture. He lived in Australia and had farmed. And so he got on the tractor and he knew how to drive the right, which I didn't even have that. And so it's so much on the job training, and we've been overwhelmed in both good and bad ways since we've been here, but we're still here. We're almost 3 years in. And so we're figuring it out,
And so you on the side, it sounds like it, but I'll ask the question still. Are you on the side of find good people and empower them and let them get out of their way and just create the space as an entrepreneur, as an owner and operator to create the space? Like, how do you go about that?
A lot of it ourselves. Just financially, we have to. We're a small winery, and so it's sort of we wear a lot of hats. So Chuck was extremely helpful. We do have a lady who consults with us on the winemaking side now, and so that's very helpful. She's not here a whole lot, but we utilize her, for tasting notes and equations and say, hey, check these numbers, make sure we didn't move a decimal or add a zero or, do any of that crazy stuff. And then it's a lot of reading and just a lot of talking to the people. The community in Palisade is awesome. So we have them to lean on always.
Well, let's touch on this. So you mentioned somebody helping you out. Like, Jean comes up a lot. She's the wizard, right? She very much has the science background. And so she's, doing viticulture and enology at Western Colorado Community College. And Julianne Adams over at Vine 79 mentioned as well. So clearly everyone knows that Jean is the person to talk to. What does it mean to have that kind of support? Again, that that you're green, but you have the hustle of the entrepreneurial spirit. You figure it out. You do what you got to do. You find smart people. Like, what does it mean to have somebody like Jeannie helping you out?
It's huge. Just to know that if we need her, we can call her. She lives in Palisade also. And so, if we need her to come taste or we need her to be up at the winery, she can be available to do that. A lot of times it's phone conversations, but she's got a real knack for helping, like you said, with the science of it.
Right.
But she's very good at letting the winemakers sort of take over the art side of winemaking.
Yes.
And so she's not telling us what kind of wine, say a Cabernet Sauvignon. She's not telling us what kind of Cabernet Sauvignon to make. She's just making sure that we're not making a Cab Sauv that tastes like vinegar, right? Like that's so. So she's awesome. She's a great support system, and she helps out quite a few of the wineries around here, just in a consulting role. And she's a fabulous resource for the Colorado wine industry to have.
I love it. All right, let's talk about Palisade a little bit, right? Big believer of this, create a sense of place. And I feel very much on the Western Slope. They've done a good job of that. I think there's even more opportunity to do so. So when you're thinking about that, when you're thinking about the people that are in your winery right now, that are outside on the patio, creating a sense of place and being a part of the community, as you mentioned, let's get into that a little bit. Why is it important? What are you doing to kind of like be a pillar of the community to create a sense of brand and place? Like, give us a little bit of your thoughts there.
Sure. So that was one of the big things that when we took Mesa Park over, we knew that we had to increase sales. I mean, Brandon and I are living off of this place, right? And so it's not a hobby for us. It's how we pay our bills. And so we knew we had to increase sales. And in doing so, that meant create a tasting room that suits us and shows our style. Our patio area, we've totally cleaned up. We do comedy night in the vines.
We had comedy night, and wine doesn't seem, snooty people really smelling wine. You have that image, but for you, it's like, let's make it playful and fun. Go there.
Absolutely.
Automatically, people are like, yes, we need this. Was it like, well, my wine experience doesn't feel like funny. It feels serious. Like, give us a little bit of that. I love it.
Well, so we had a show last night. We have another one tonight. This is our third year working with this guy. He's his name's Ron Heron, and he's out of New York City, and he's books comedians all over the country. And he's awesome. And so we have had such a great experience doing this comedy. We sell out every show. We literally could, I mean, this year we have capacity restrictions, of course, but we've had 125-person shows up here. So, and they sell, yeah, it's crazy. It's awesome. And it's so much fun.
Do those turn into your biggest sales days?
What's that?
Do they turn into your biggest sales days from the wine perspective?
They're pretty good. They're pretty good. A lot of people come up. We don't do tastings during our comedy show, so it's just glass and bottle sales. But they're a ton of fun. And I think one of the things that we've really strived to do at Mesa Park is make wine approachable for everyone, because it shouldn't be serious and it doesn't have to be scary or intimidating. It should be fun. And it's like, you can smell it and you can say, I'm getting this, I taste this, I do that. But at the end of the day, if you like it, drink it. And if you don't, then don't, I mean, that's sort of the bottom line.
Oh, I really like that. So let's talk about the wine itself a little bit. Give us an idea of what you're growing, right? Estate grown wine. Actually, first, why is estate grown wine important? What does that give you the opportunity to do? And then let's talk about some of the grapes that you're specifically growing.
I think that the biggest thing for us with growing our own grapes is that we have control of the process from the time we start pruning to, that wine being bottled. We literally are reds. So we grow Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc. Our reds do not leave our property until a customer walks out the door with them. And so they've literally been grown here, crushed here, fermented here, bottled, aged, bottled, labeled, capsuled, the whole 9 yards happens at our property. And so my husband, Brandon, farms, and then he's our winemaker. And so that gives him just a great opportunity to just, he knows what's gone on with those grapes from the time that, we see buds on the vines in May all the way through the process. And so that's huge for us. And it's also, it's one of those things, the atmosphere here, our patio is surrounded by our Cabernet Franc vines. And right now, this time of year, they're going through veraison. So you're seeing them turn purple. Literally, there's clusters that are halfway purple and halfway green. And so that's super cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And so it just, to me, it creates a pretty authentic experience for everyone, because you're literally sitting amongst the vines. And when we pour our wines, it's like, here's our Merlot. Those are the Merlot vines. This is from those in 2017, and that's really cool.
You can't get more sense of place than that. You literally are feeling and seeing and interacting in a tactile way. You're smelling it, you're seeing it, you're hearing it, the rustling of, the vines, and then you're tasting that wine. There's no way that it doesn't taste better. It just does. It just does. If I have your wine at a restaurant in Denver or New York City, it'll be good. Right. If the juice is good, it's good no matter where. If I'm drinking it sitting in the vineyard, it's just better. There's just no way around it. Just the feeling, the emotion, the sense of connection that you have. So you're definitely capitalizing on that, which I think is very smart. When a guest comes in that experience, like, how are you communicating that to them? Like, what is the conversation that you have when they're sitting there having the wine? You mentioned just pointing over those with the Merlot, but go a little deeper. Let's talk about the conversations that you're having that really inspire people to feel that sense of place.
Sure. So I think one of the things that we've really tried to do, and it's been exhausting for us, but I think it's so valuable, is I'm in the tasting room almost every day, and I'm interacting with the guests, and I'm also the one crushing the grapes with Brandon and bottling the wine and all that sort of stuff. So, and we try to get our staff involved in as much of that process too. I don't want them to just be tasting room servers if we're bottling and they're there. I want them to be bottling. And so then it's very easy to describe how that process works once you've done it, right?
The process, that's important to you.
Exactly. And so just educating, ourselves and our staff members on what goes on and what goes into one of these bottles of wine is huge, right? And so the other thing that we do, if you walk into our tasting room, there's a glass wall where you can see we have about 80 barrels full of red wine in there, and you can see right through there, barrels full. And so we get a lot of questions like, oh, are those real? Is it? And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's
right.
Malbec sitting in there, it'll be ready to go in 2021. So
not prop barrels over there. Yeah, exactly. We do not have room for prop barrels. Every square inch of space is utilized for production. You might even be sitting on barrels sometime in the tasting room because
it's like Tetris there all the time, So I think we are a small winery, and you get to see a lot of what we're doing. The tractor drives through the patio. Sometimes it's a gravel patio, and it's like you're within our vineyard, and the tractor's got to turn around, when it's doing whatever it's doing out there, mowing so it's real life, you're on an operating vineyard. So it's pretty cool.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit more about the wine, maybe some of the ethos, some of the thought process, some of the processes that you're really excited about that kind of differentiate some of your wines. The grapes you're talking about, classic Bordeaux blend stuff, Cab Sauv, Merlot, and Cab Franc. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about the wines a little bit. As you're making wine, you and your husband, what's the approach? What do you think? What are you trying to capture in that bottle?
So, well, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from us, but it's, I think the style. So Brandon really is the lead on the winemaking, and that's his baby and his side of the business. But what we don't want to have a whole lot of input, as far as chemicals and manipulation of the wine. Fortunately, we can grow some really good grapes in Colorado, and the three that we grow, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc. We want to let the grapes speak for themselves rather than, adding a bunch of whatever into them. And we don't generally have to do that, which is awesome. So we're a pretty low input as far as our winemaking style. We do a rosé from our Merlot as well, and that's very, very popular. Mesa Park has always traditionally been known for its drier reds because of the three varietals that we grow. Yeah. And we've kept with that. We don't intend to change that. We do several blends, and as you spoke to the Bordeaux style grapes that we have, we do buy Petit Verdot and Malbec, and so we've got the 5.
You got all 5.
Yeah. And so we've got some really nice red blends too. And Brandon and I both like dry red wine, and so it's easy to make something, that you like. And dry rosé, it's 105 degrees outside. A rosé tastes pretty darn good too.
Yeah, agreed. Especially as arid as it is, think of anybody who thinks that they know what Colorado looks like. You're not talking mountains. You're talking more like what you think maybe Utah looks like, right? You're almost to Utah, a little more high desert feel to it. You see a lot more red than you see green and white for sure. So I think that's something interesting to think about. Cab Franc. Let's talk about Cab Franc for a second. I'm a big buyer and believer that Cab Franc needs to be the grape of Colorado. There's an opportunity in the market to own that space. I think it grows really well. I tell people a lot. It's not what people, especially in restaurants, like my restaurant people, we like Cab Franc as a blender because it has that kind of really vegetal, pithy green bell pepper note to it that we associate with it. So it doesn't stand out as a single grape varietal as a standalone wine. Yet what I get is more like roasted red bell pepper from a lot of what I taste out there. I get a lot more like unique gravelly kind of tobacco characters.
Earthiness, that kind of thing.
Which I think does stand alone. So I tell my restaurant people, like, if you think of yourself as a Colorado-focused farm-to-table restaurant that's like really evoking what it means to be Colorado, and you don't have multiple Colorado Cab Francs on your list, you're missing it.
Totally.
You're missing the trick, people. So talk about Cab Franc for a second. Let's give it the stage.
So we've got just a few acres of Cab Franc, and I love Cab Franc. I didn't drink Cab Franc until I started drinking Colorado wine, and I'm like, oh, what is this? And I see that day in and day out in the tasting room too. People are like, I had no idea. I've never had this before. What's the difference between Cab Franc and Cab Sauv? And I mean, you can taste them, right? They're different varietals and they're very, very different grapes. But Cab Franc, people tend to call it Colorado's Cab. We do it better than we do Cab Sauv, I think, generally speaking, in the Colorado wine industry. Nice. And it has that vegetative quality to it, but it doesn't. In my opinion, if you do it right, it doesn't need to be overpowering. People really tend to like the earthiness of Cab Franc, and you can get some nice peppery notes from it too. And we've seen it heavily oaked. We've seen it pretty lightly oaked, and you can get some really nice fruity qualities from that. Agreed. we're going to start doing it solely on French oak, which is a little bit more delicate and not quite as overpowering as American oak. And we've got a 2018 coming out here. We're just about to bottle it, and we're so excited. So we love Cab Franc here. We're huge fans of Cab Franc. Mesa Park's vineyard, the Cab Franc that it produces is phenomenal. We're known for our Cab Franc. Unfortunately, we don't have one on our menu right now. Like I said, we're just about ready to bottle the 2018. But we get people walking in all the time like, hey, we came for your Cab Franc, and we use it in our blends. It's a fabulous grape. And a lot of people may not have heard of it, but they've had it if they've had a Bordeaux blend, because it's in there. It's just a lesser percentage varietal. And so, there's just so many great attributes about it, and it grows much better here than Cabernet Sauvignon does. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think the industry as a whole, we're behind Cab Franc in Colorado, and hopefully that continues to grow. So
yeah, it takes a long time it takes a generation to get people away from buttery Chardonnay and big, highly extracted, super jammy Cab Sauv. And so it's difficult when you have a winery and you want to sell to the market. The market knows what it knows currently. It takes a long time and a lot of money to re-educate the market. So Cab Franc, without a big machine of money behind it, putting it out there, it is a challenge. So, but I think
one of the things that I think is really cool about it, and we get to do it in the tasting room all the time, is it's just educating people on a varietal that they may not be familiar with, and, like I said, what's the difference between Cab Sauv and Cab Franc? And Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc are actually the two parent grapes of Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yep.
So it's interesting that a medium tannin red and a white grape, produced this big, bold,
the beast of the industry.
Exactly. But it's the educational part of it, I think, is awesome, because say they were at Hermosa Vineyards and had his Cab Franc, and then they come over and they liked his, then they're like, hey, we want to try your Cab Franc. And that's how it starts, and then they're going to go to the liquor store when they get back to Denver and say, where do you guys carry any Cab Francs? And so it's just this slow rolling thing that it happens over time. And so I think if we can keep doing it well in Colorado, it'll take care of itself.
I like what you just said. My marketing brain goes on. I want to see like a Palisade bingo card for Cab Franc that you can hit all the Cab Franc producers, bingo, and then I don't know, you get some prize. You get free brunch at the Wine Country Inn. I don't know, something. I'm a big believer. We just need to get as much Cab Franc, both in the consumer side, but for me, it's like restaurants. You have got to get Cab Franc into restaurants, because we know, to the point that you just made, when they go to the winery and then they come back to Denver, people go to their liquor store and say, I just had this amazing Colorado Cab Franc at this restaurant. Do you carry it? You don't see a lot of people going to the restaurant say, I go to my liquor store and I always buy this wine. Do you guys carry it? Right? So they're looking to restaurants also as a medium for education. So connecting with restaurants, sommeliers in your markets, I think is very, very important, and it's underrated. So I want people to buy your wine. Tell us where we can get some of your wine.
So we're working on that. One of our big goals for this year was to get into several restaurants here in Grand Junction, and then COVID hit, and so that's been tabled a little bit for now. But we do most of our sales out of our tasting room. We produce about 1,000 cases a year.
Okay.
And sell through that in our tasting room. We do intend to increase our production, and we are in a few liquor stores in Grand Junction. So Fisher's Liquor Barn carries us, Redlands Liquor, and then there's a liquor store in Palisade that carries us. And again, the goal is to get our wine further out there. We just need more of it, which good problem to have. We can make more. So and then we can ship to 40 different states, and that's that Vino Shipper link that I gave you.
Yeah, there you go.
And all over the state of Colorado, we have flat rate shipping specials, and on our website, it's pretty easy to just follow the links. So, but do watch for us in restaurants, both on the Front Range and over here. That's one of our goals in the coming year. So we'll get there. It's a
Good.
little bit of time, you know?
Well, and I think it's going to be very, very important for winemakers to be savvy in that direct to consumer is a huge opportunity as well. So tasting room is where you have the best margins. You can create the sense of place.
Right.
Restaurants is where you have the biggest brand asset of just so many butts and seats, and people trust restaurants at a high level, right? And then direct to consumer is where you're cultivating community, where you're cutting out the middleman. So like those are the different buckets you need to be thinking about. And I think it's important for you to understand the economics of it and then also the brand positioning of it.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate the way that you're kind of going about that. Well, I want to give a shout out to Cassidy Shull for sure, who is the executive director of CAVE, Colorado Association of Viticulture and Enology, and just such a great ambassador. I think, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years she's kind of been in that position. And remember early on,
those people in the valley, just like Jenny, that we are lucky to have. She's really grown into her position, and she's such an asset, both, you know, in lobbying and just you know, trying to get things going in our favor as an emerging industry in Colorado. And then the events that they put together, you know, we do VinCo, which is our wine conference in January every year. And then unfortunately WineFest was canceled this year, but they put on a killer wine festival. I think it's one of the largest in the country, and it's been voted the best in the country, and it's in Palisade. I mean, that's awesome, you know?
That's the first time I came to Palisade. Was I was invited to come out, and I did a cooking demo, and we did it up and met everybody. I think we hit like, I don't know, 20 wineries, a couple breweries and distilleries. We hit all of the makers while we were out there, and met Josh Nurnberg for the first time, who I think is the greatest chef operator anywhere in the country. True ambassador for what's happening on the Western Slope. So appreciate that. And then I really love this. I want to give, kind of wrap up, this is perfect, but you gave a shout out to some of the volunteers. It takes a village. The community you talked about, being able to support each other, and then the staff that you have, getting them involved in the process, and then be able to have people who come and volunteer. Like, talk about some of these humans and how important they are.
So those 3 humans are, I mean, so Sue McGuire is my mom. But
moms are the best, most important humans. Good job.
She and my stepdad moved over to Grand Junction about 6 months after we bought the winery.
Wow, that's awesome.
Both her and Tom, my stepdad, I mean, they're here. They volunteer. If I need an afternoon to get something done, she's gladly in the tasting room to cover. They work our events with us. They are, thank God they're here. You know,
real family business, the real family business, generational. I like that.
It's they're like I said, we couldn't do it without them. So, and then Dick and Lois Bryant, they actually were very good friends with the prior owners and helped. Dick helps bottle, and now he helps label. So we do everything so manually here. We don't have one of those big bottling lines where you just throw the bottles in one side and they come out ready to go on the other side. Bottling is a 5-man job, and then labeling is another step, and capsuling is another step. And Dick and Lois they've turned into family for us too. I mean, those guys, sometimes I almost feel guilty. I'm like, what can I do for you? You know, just doing so much for us. And we're just so appreciative of everything that they do. And my husband said it the other day, he's like, they're family now, and they are. And so, and there's a laundry list of people, you know, that I could have put on here.
Yeah, that acknowledgement is so important. Just it's the bedrock of this show is literally acknowledgement. You're on because Cassidy acknowledged you, and now you're acknowledging Sue, Dick, and Lois, and that matters. Like, they're gonna watch this and go, I really appreciate that. And I think the more that we put that into our ecosystems within our communities, it makes a difference. It really does. So I'm grateful that I got to get introduced to a few new people, and now I know your mom. That's amazing. I'm excited about that. So when I come out there and we
might be here, yeah,
and I do the Cab Franc bingo, and I get bingo, and I get to meet your mom, like, that stuff matters. Like, that's the story that I'll tell. It's the story that I'll tell more than how good your wine is. Absolutely. Right?
Sure. Connection, right? That's so much of it is just connection.
That's it. Create a sense of place, people. 100%. The game, Mesa Park, Laura Black, you guys are doing a great job of that. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time, effort. And now I'm chomping at the bit for some wine, for some Cab Franc.
We'll be here. So.
All right. Well, go take care of your guests because they
I will do it. It's Saturday.
Right, take care. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. We'll see ya.
Bye-bye. All right. Laura Black of Mesa Park Vineyards out in Palisade. I'm a big believer. You know, there's some amazing people. There's some amazing wines. There's lots of room for growth. Don't get me wrong. This is not Bordeaux yet. The opportunity, and it's a young market. And I'm going to keep saying it. Cab Franc. Somebody out there. Bingo. Cab Franc. Bingo. Support each other. Get people out and trying the Cab Franc at all those places. I'll give daps to Riesling and Viognier as white varietals that I think play really well in Colorado, that there's a little bit of space to own as well. So appreciate you guys. As always, this episode, Best Served Podcast 169. And we got to talk estate-grown Colorado wines a little bit with Laura Black of Mesa Park Vineyard. Again, Best Served Chilled, a channel I'm super excited about. Anybody who knows me knows that craft beer, wine, distilling, sake, all of it has been a big part of my life. And I like focusing on the people behind the amazing products. So we'll be talking to beverage producers and professionals. So you'll see winemakers, brewers, distillers, bartenders, sommeliers, cicerone, everybody, the whole ecosystem, people that bring us the best in beverage. So that's all I got for you today. Appreciate you as always. Thanks for watching. Cheers.